Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I hope you all are doing absolutely well. Guys, in today's video, we are going to implement a major concept. Okay, what we are going to implement is we are going to implement a counter app. Okay, you can say, which will increment and decrement the counter value and will also reset the counter value. But now you might be thinking this is a very basic app and we already know how to implement it. So guys, the major aim behind making this video is not to understand or how to create a counter app, but to understand how the functionality of Redux works. Okay, because we know Redux is sometimes a very complicated topic when you get started with it. So in this video, what we are going to do is we are going to use Redux Toolkit. Okay, in order to implement that, I will be telling you the exact workflow, how the Redux Toolkit or Redux workflow works. Like when you click on a button, what happens, like when action is, what is action, what is reducer, what is a store, what is a slice, everything we will be covering in detail in this video. Even though if you are getting started with Redux or Redux Toolkit, this video is going to be very helpful for you and it is going to clear a lot of concepts. Because you know what happens is sometimes even though you know everything and you get started with a more complicated app, like maybe a to-do list or anything else which is more complicated, there is a lot of actions that are getting performed in an app, then you get a lot of confusion that what is happening at what point of time. So when you get started with an easier app, you know exactly how the workflow is happening. Okay, so maybe in the upcoming video I will also bring a more complicated application which is using Redux, but for now let's get started with the easier one so that your concepts are clear. So guys, before we start the video, if you are new to my channel, make sure to subscribe to the channel as I regularly post these kinds of helpful coding tutorials for all of you on my channel. So guys, as a first thing, what I will be doing is I will be creating a sandbox, because today we are going to code in sandbox itself. I'm going to name my sandbox as Redux counter or something. Okay, and then we will first be understanding the concepts and the workflow of Redux Toolkit, and then after that we will be coding it so that it will be super easy once you have already understood the logic behind that. So now let us, what first of all we will be doing is I will be explaining you how the workflow happens. Okay, so guys, understand this very carefully. See, first of all, what happens is we have a UI, right? This UI is nothing but your screen, you can say. Now let us suppose that we have a button on the UI. Okay, maybe like a increment button and a decrement button, whatever you can see. Okay, so these types of button are there on the UI. So whenever you make a click or whenever you perform any action on the UI, what happens is, suppose you are clicking on this button, then a action will be triggered. Okay, like an action you are performing, and what is that action? This action is your increment. Okay, like it can be increment or decrement, right? Or it can be reset. Okay, so these are the different types of actions that you are performing whenever you hit a click on the button. Now as soon as you click on that button, the action is called out. Okay, and this action, what it will be doing is it will be calling a function which is attached to it, and that function is called as reducer. Now you might be thinking, what is the difference between an action and a function, action and a reducer? So action is just telling you what action you have performed, and what actually needs to be done will be dependent on the reducer function. Now for example, for increment, how the action, how the reducer function is going to look like, it will be something like incrementing the value. Okay, so for example, like basically what we are incrementing, right? So we are incrementing, suppose, a value. So our initial value is 0 initially, right? So what I will be doing is value plus equals to 1. So what I mean is, whenever I hit the action increment, please call the reducer function which is incrementing the value by 1. In the similar way, when we call the decrement, it will decrement the value by 1, and reset was the third one. So reset will basically make it value to 0 again. Okay, so let's revise it. So far what has happened, when we clicked on this button, the action is dispatched which is calling the reducer function, and this reducer function, what it will do now is, after performing the action, it is updating the state of our store. Okay, so this state that is it is updating, where this will eventually get updated, it will get updated here in the store, because as I told you, we have initially set our value to 0, right? So this value we are setting it into our store. Okay, so we clicked on the button, it dispatches an action, the action called the reducer function updated the value in the store. Okay, so this is the workflow to update the value in the store. Now once the value is updated, we have to display it again on the UI, right? Because see, we are updating the state value, then on the UI we will be showing something, right? So for example, this is our UI where the value was initially 0. Now the value after the increment action was performed, it is now 1. So we have to show also, right? So that is what is called as subscribing to the store. Basically we are subscribing to the store. Subscribing means getting the data from the store and displaying it on the UI. Okay, that is what is called as subscribing to the store. And how do we subscribe to the store? We subscribe to the store in Redux Toolkit using a hook called as useSelector. Okay. And how do we dispatch? Like dispatch, what was dispatch and subscribe? Let's understand that first, okay, because that should be clear for you. Dispatch is basically updating the data on the store. Okay, so dispatch, for dispatching we have a hook called as useDispatch. For subscribing we have a hook called as useSelector. So basically whatever we are seeing right now on the screen is only what we are going to code in today's video, and this is how much simple is Redux. If you have understand this diagram and this workflow, then it is very easy. Now let me also tell you guys that Redux is one such concept which you need to regularly revise after every few weeks or days, because I have myself noticed it that if you won't revise it, you might get confused, okay, again and again. So that is why this is the aim of this video, that I want to create the smallest video as possible, which is covering the entire workflow also, and which will clear all your doubts. So enough of the explanation now. Let's quickly finally revise it, and then we will be jumping on to the code part. Okay, so what's happening is whenever I'm clicking on a button, the action is getting dispatched, which is calling my reducer function, which is updating the state of the store. Okay, and then I'm subscribing to the store and displaying the data on my UI using my useSelector hook. Now guys, in this there is also a terminology called as slice. Okay, so if you're not aware what a slice is, so let me tell you, like, you know, when you are working on a large application, so there can be different you know what do we say, features. Okay, there can be different features that are there in the app. Like for example, let's consider this only. One is your counter. Okay, there is a counter feature, there is a cart feature, there is something called as, like, you know, authentication feature. So for every single feature we will create a single slice, okay, to make the code modular and not just everything in one single file. Okay, so what we will do is we will create one slice and we will add that slice to our store. So but yeah, it will be very super clear when we will code, but yeah, I just wanted to tell you this about this term, which is slice. Now let us understand quickly what are the steps in which we are going to code and the concept overview. This will be helpful for you for revision in future. So see guys, when we click on the button, it dispatches an action which will call the reducer function, which updates the slice of the store. You can say slice of the store or state of the store, it is one and the same thing. When we then subscribe to the store using the useSelector hook and display the data on the UI. Now as I told you, there will be step-by-step workflow how we have to do it, because you know usually when you will working in any of the organization or company, the store might be already set up, but if you are working on a project which is getting implemented from scratch, you might yourself have to set up the store also. So we are going to see from scratch that how do you set up your own store and everything. Okay, so see, first of all what we are going to do is we will be creating the store using we are going to create the store using configurestore. Configurestore is an API which we get from Redux Toolkit. Then what we are going to do is we are going to connect our store to our React application. And how do we do that? We do that using provider. Then once that is done, we are going to create the slice. Remember I told you what is a slice. A slice is basically a feature regarding to that. We are going to create one slice. Okay, so in our case we are going to create a counter slice. Once the slice is created, we will be putting that slice into our store. Okay, then what we are going to do is last two steps are usual steps which you will actually implement on your daily basis, because these 4 steps are like setting up your Redux store. Okay, you can say, and these 2 are like your normal, like displaying the data on the screen, which is subscribing to the store, and then dispatching actions, which is updating your state value in the store. Okay, so let's now move on to our code editor and let's get started with our coding. So let me go to my code editor, and first thing what we will be needing is the, like, you know, packages. First thing we will be needing is Redux Toolkit. Okay, so let's install them. So this is the first one, Redux.js Toolkit. Then this is done. Okay, now we will also need one more thing, React Redux. Okay, so you might be thinking why 2 things. See, first of all, Redux Toolkit is basically will help you to set up your store, and React Redux is like a connector between your Redux and your React application. Okay, so this is helpful for that. So let's start with our first step. Okay, and we will be referring to these steps which are mentioned here, which are the 6 steps, so that you will understand how we are moving forward. So let's do the first step, which is creating the store using configure store. Okay, so I'm now performing this first step. Let me create a file called as store.js. Okay, this is the naming convention that we usually follow for creating the store. Okay, so I'm just creating a file called as store.js, and let's do this thing, that import. I told you that there is something called as configure store, using which we will be setting our store, right? So see, this configure store is coming from Redux Toolkit. Okay, so that is why it was important to install that package. Okay, now what we are going to do is I'm going to write const store, okay, is equals to configure store, and then this will have an object. Okay, and something will come in that object. I will be telling you that in a minute, and after that we will be just be exporting our store. Okay, so export default store. Now what will come in these brackets over here in this object, basically once we create our slice, right? I told you in the third step we are going to create our slice. Okay, that is our counter slice. So once our slice is created, we will be putting that slice into our store. So this that slice will come here. Okay, so we will put slice here in step 3. Okay, so I'm just writing the comment over here. Okay, so it will be clear. See, as you can say, as of now we have already completed our step 1, which is creating a store. Now let's move on to step number 2, which is wrapping the app with provider to connect Redux to React. Okay, in simpler terms, what it means is, see, you have created your store. Okay, but how your app will get to know that there is some store which is created and some data is getting updated in that store and all, right? So in order to do that, you need to connect your store with your application. So what you need to do is, we will be going to our index.js where our app component is getting called. Okay, and for the moment I don't need this strictness, so I'm just removing these things. These are not necessary as of now. What I will be doing is, I will be calling my store here. Okay, first of all, and in order to connect it to my app, what I need is, I also need a provider. Okay, and this provider also we will get it from our React Redux. Okay, see, I told you, right, React Redux is used for connecting your store with the React application. So now we will wrap our app with the provider. Okay, and like this, and we have to pass our store, right? So what I will be doing is, I will be writing it like this, store and then store. So in this way we have also completed our second step. First step was creating the store, second step is to provide the store to our application. Okay, so step 2 is also done now, wrapping the app with provider to connect Redux to React. Now step 3 is what? Step 3 is creating a slice with create slice containing reducers and initial states. Let's do this part now, and this is most important, I would say, as of now. Okay, because for now our app might break because we have not added the slice here, so that is totally fine for now. Let's now complete our step 3, which is creating the slice. Now I am going to name my slice something like counter slice. You can name anything, but name it meaningful, which clearly tells what is the job of this slice. Okay, so counter slice is basically, this slice is related to my counter application or count functionality. Okay, so that is what it is. Let's create the slice. Now to create the slice, we need something called as create slice. Okay, so this is an API basically. So import create slice. See, so create slice we will get from Redux.js toolkit. Okay, RTK. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to write const counter slice, which is the name of my slice, and then here using create slice I'm going to create my slice. Okay, now you have to understand, this counter slice takes an object, and inside this object there will be 3 important things. Okay, what are those 3 important things? First is your name. Okay, then second is your initial state. Basically initial state is what? Initial state is only your state. Okay, like value which I told you, right, which we need. And then the third one is your reducers. Okay, we will be understanding this one by one. First of all, what is name? Name is your name of the slice. Okay, so counter is the name which I want to give it to my slice, so I have given counter. Okay, here. Now second thing, initial state is going to be an object. Okay, now this, because understand one thing, that in your feature you might need more than one state, right? So that is why we are creating it as an object. Okay, so in this way, like this time in our app we only have one state which we need, so which is fine. But if you have multiple states like this, you can create multiple states. Okay, like, and then assign them the value or something. Okay, so I hope you understood why we are creating it as an object, because if we, just in case if we have multiple states, then it will go one after the other in this way. Now we have reducers. Okay, now in this section what it goes is, it will have actions and then corresponding reducer functions defined in this part. Okay, so let's do that now. So first of all, what is our first action, which I told you right, we had three actions that we need to, like, call. First is your increment, decrement and reset. So let's do that. So first of all, I'm going to write my increment action, and then for this action I want to define my function. So see, increment is the action, and then this is the reducer function. This function will have the state automatically which it will be getting, and then I need what I need once this function is called, that I will define here. Okay, so simply what I will be doing is state dot value and then plus equals to 1. Just give it some time and try to sink in. Okay, it is very easy, guys, understand. See, this state is basically giving us the state. Okay, basically state, from state we are going to get our value of the state. Okay, this value is nothing but the value that we are getting from the initial state. So state dot value, what we are doing is we are incrementing it by 1. And if you're getting confused by this, you can also understand it in this way. State dot value is equals to state dot value plus 1. Okay, it is one and the same thing. It was just shorter way of writing this, so I'm just writing it in this way. Okay, now our first action is, like, declared. We have declared that and defined it also using the reducer function. Let's do it for this. Let's do the same for the second one. So decrement is my second action name, and here also I will be getting the state, and what I want is, whenever this action is dispatched, I want my reducer function to decrement the value, right? Simply minus is equals to 1. Okay, and what will be my third action? It was reset. Again, what I want is, whenever this action is called, I want that state dot value, just simply make it as 0. Okay, this will basically reset my value. So this is what we have done so far. And okay, this red line, why it was giving the error here, because I have not put a comma over there. Okay, because see, actually this whole itself is an object. Okay, which has 3 keys, you can say: name, initial state and reducers. So you need to put comma after every key value pair. Okay, so yeah, our this slice is created. Now what we need to do is, we need to export these two things. Okay, which is actions and reducers, because see, we are going to use this reducers and actions in our UI file, right? Because I told you we will be taking the data from the store and then updating the data to the store. So that is why we need to export it. So how we will export? So this is something, you can say, is a syntax which you might have to learn initially, then eventually you will get habitual to it. So understand this thing, that our reducers, they get exported by default. Okay, so how we export them? Export default, and then the file name, which is like slice name, basically counter slice dot reducer. Okay, and also guys, focus very carefully on the terminology. The terminology that we are using over here is reducer, whereas while defining the reducers, we were calling it as reducers. Okay, so make sure of this one, because if you write reducers here, it will give you an error and it won't work properly. So this is very important. Now we also have to export our actions. Okay, so how we will export the actions is, basically we will write something like this. Okay, export const, and this will be a named export, by the way. So increment, decrement, and then reset, and then counter slice. Where are these coming from? Action, and here it will be action. Okay, actions. Okay, yeah. So I hope this is clear now. So see guys, while exporting reducers, we are saying reducer, but while exporting actions, we are calling it as actions only. So this is a bit of catch that you have to remember. Okay, nothing complicated in this one. So see guys, we have completed our step 3, which was creating the slice. Okay, with create slice, we have used this API to create the slice, and it contains what? It contains our reducers, initial state and actions. Okay, these things it contains, and also the name of the state, name of this slice. Now our step 4 is what? Adding the slice to the store reducer section. Okay, so now what we will do is, we will go back to our store, because see, our store is there and our slice is there, and slices usually go into our store. Okay, so see, if required now, you can directly create this into your store only, but it will make your code very clumsy and very complicated to understand. That is why we usually follow that we create slice separately in a separate file, and then we will import that slice into our store. So let's do that part now. So import counter slice. So this is how we have imported. Now there is also a basic you can say syntax of writing how you are importing your slice into your store. So for that we have reducer here also, and it will be reducer this time, okay, not reducers. And then here will go your name of the slice, okay, basically name of the slice, and here you need to give that name which you are importing from your file, okay, in this way. So this is basically how we import our slice into our store, okay. So we have already put that here, so I'm now removing this comment. See, now our app is running fine again, because I told you, right, previously it was giving error because we have not added our slice into the store. Now what was the next step? Let's understand that. So see guys, till here our all the setup steps are completed. Now store is set up clearly, that is why our app is also running fine. Now let's move on to the last two steps, which you will, I would say, perform maximum number of times in your working application, because see, this is a one-time setup, you can say, okay. These 4 steps is a one-time setup usually in your applications, because every time you won't create a store and again, okay. Once for your React application the store is set up, then you just have to fetch and display the data, that's it only, right? So let's move on to the 5th step, which is displaying the data on the store. Now what is our data in our case? Our data in our case is this value, okay. Now our major aim at this point of time is to display this value on the screen. So for that I will need a UI file, okay, which I will name as counter.jsx, okay. And I will quickly create this file, okay. Const, this is our simple React component, const counter is equals to, I am creating a functional component using array functional, okay. Now export default counter, okay, and here I will be writing return, and in this one I will be having a div, okay, and in this div I will first name it as like some basic heading I will be giving counter app, okay, saving this file and calling this file in my app component so that it displays on my screen. So import counter, okay, and then I will remove these 2 lines because I don't want it. Now instead of this I want to render my counter component. Now my counter component is rendering and I can see this. Now as I told you, we also need few different things. Let's set those up, okay. So I will again go to my counter component. First thing is I want to show my counter value, and then I will be needing 3 buttons for increment, decrement and resetting. So let's set up all of that, okay. So for that thing which is like showing my counter value, I will be using a s3. So I will write something like count value is, and as of now I'm hard coding it, okay, but I already told you we will be getting the data from the store, okay, in few minutes. And then I will write some like buttons. I will create 3 buttons. First will say increment, okay, and I just want to give some basic space after this button, and I will create another button after this which will call decrement, like which we will name as decrement. Let's see how is our app looking. So far so good. I just want one line break over after this one, and then I will add my 3rd button which will be our reset button. Let me do that also. So now you can see we got the 3 buttons. I also need one more line break because it is just sticking, right? Okay, so far it is looking decent enough. Now let's move on to our again back to the logic, which was like to getting our which was step 4, which was step 5 to subscribing to the store using useSelector hook, okay, as I told you. So as a first step we need to import useSelector hook, okay. So how you will do that? You will just write useSelector and this hook will come from React Redux, okay. Okay, now we have got the useSelector hook. How we will make use of this useSelector hook and get the count value? For this, what we are going to write is const, and we are going to create basically a variable which will hold the value of the store, okay. So const count value, and here we are going to write useSelector. Now the major important thing, okay, this is the most important thing I would say. See, you want the data from your store, so basically what you do is you get the data, and this state, whenever I write this state is basically your entire store, okay. from your store what you need. From your store you need your counter slice, and from your counter slice you need your value. So how you are going to write this? State, which is my entire store. I'm telling you what exact, I'm telling count, I'm putting the exact value what I need in my counter slice. Okay, sorry, count value. So state dot counter dot value. Okay, saved it. Now I will be using this count value variable instead of this hard coded 0, and you will notice that the actual value of my count value is getting displayed. You might think that why is this 0 change? So to make you explain that this is not the hard coded value and this is the value that we are getting from the store, I will update the value in the store here like this, and you can see on the screen also it should get updated. Okay, so it is just refreshing the app. Let's see, you can see, right? So I hope you understood that how we are doing it. It was pretty easy, just that you have to understand and practice it once or twice, then you will understand easily. This is basically how we subscribe to the store. Okay, in this step, like in these two lines, okay, this one line and this second line over here, we are subscribing to the store and displaying the data on this UI. Okay, which was our step 4. Now coming to step 5, which is very important one, which is dispatching the action. Okay, let's see, we had the data in our store. Our duty was to get the data from the store and displaying it on the UI, which we have already done. Now there is an important thing that when I click on these buttons, I want to, like, interact with my store, that is the data or the state which is there in the store. I want to update that. So how we are going to do that? For that, what we need to do is we need to write the functions. So first of all, let's write it for we are going to write an on click event handler. So which means whenever this increment button is going to get clicked, just do the things which are written in this function definition. So for that, I told you, right, whenever we need to update anything in the store, we need a hook called as useDispatch. You remember the first statement that we wrote, whenever we click on the button, it dispatches an action. So dispatching the action thing, which is what we are doing right now. So in order to use this dispatch, how we usually do is we will create a variable which is dispatch, and then we are going to write our useDispatch over here, and in this way, and this dispatch function is going to call our actions. So in this function, I'm going to write it like this: dispatch. In this, our function we have already defined in the store. So at this point, our duty is just to call that. Okay, here. That's it. Basically, dispatch will handle everything. We just see when I hover over dispatch, it is showing me the code also. Okay, but don't get confused by this at this point of time. And it's just that it is performing the action. Let's see if it is working or not. See, when I'm clicking on this, it is updating. So you can, at this moment only, you can understand the entire workflow. See, where I'm clicking on this button, it is dispatching the action from here, which is calling the reducer function from where? Here. When I clicked on the button, it dispatches the action from this line number 12. It is calling the reducer function from line number 9 to 11. This reducer function is what it is doing. It is updating the state of the slice in the store. Okay, so this is updating the state from this line number 10, and then in the store it is getting updated here. Okay, and once it is updated, again back to our this file, we are displaying the data using useSelector hook onto our UI, right? So this is the usual workflow. Now I'm going to write the same thing. It is kind of repetitive. So for decrement function also, I'm going to write the function definition, like I'm going to dispatch the action. So dispatch, and it will be called as decrement, and here I'm going to do the same. Basically this, because see, all the things are already set up. So now when I will click on decrement button, okay, let me see what is happening over here. Decrement is not defined. Okay, yeah, one important thing is, previously guys, when we wrote increment, it automatically imported the increment function, okay, from increment action, you can say, from this one counter slice. And this time for decrement also, for decrement it did it automatically, but you have to remember that if it does not do it automatically, you yourself have to import it, okay, because it does not understand what decrement is. So that is why we are doing this. Okay, now let's click on this, and you can see decrement functionality is also working. Now what I want is, for this reset, I also want to like dispatch reset action. So again I'm going to write on click, and here again the same thing, I'm going to dispatch the action which is reset. Okay, at the reset action we have already defined. Okay, so again this will give an error because we need to import it. Okay, let's see now if it is working. So when I click on this reset, it should mark it to 0. So guys, we have now implemented our counter functionality Okay, the increment is working fine, decrement is working fine, reset is working fine. Now for the last time, I just want to take you back to that diagram and we will just revise it quickly, everything, how this works, and I hope it will be super clear for all of you. See guys, we have the button on our screen which is increment, decrement and reset. Whenever we click on this button, it dispatches an action which calls the reducer function, which will update the slice of the store. And then we subscribe to the store using the useSelector hook and display the data on the UI. This is the workflow. Okay, and now to showcase you that via our code, whenever I click on the button, it dispatches an action which calls the reducer function, which updates the slice of my store. We then subscribe to the store using the useSelector hook and displays the data on the UI. Super clear, right? So guys, that's all for this video. I will be leaving the link of the code in the description box of this video. You can access it from there. And guys, I would really suggest you honestly that you need to practice it multiple times if you are a beginner in this, because then only your concepts will get clear. So guys, that's all for this video. Make sure to subscribe to the video and like it if you are subscribed to the channel, and like the video if you found it helpful, and to see more such videos related to coding, make sure that you are subscribing to the channel, and please do share your feedback in the comment section. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching the video, and I will see you next time.